I wanted to introduce Andy, and he's one of the reasons that we're even here, because I got to sit in on one of your meetings, Andy. I think it was probably in January when we first started going to or you started holding those meetings. Maybe they were.
Oh, well, the regional meetings. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so I just want to thank you for helping organize that stuff, because of that and the speakers that you brought, I thought we need to get this stuff out to the public. Yeah. And so we're using a lot of the same speakers that you've been using, a lot of the same topics, and it's been super successful today. So I just wanted to bring you on board to just tell us about the work that you're doing in Ventura County, just to give people hope that, yes, people are out there doing stuff and how we can help, Andy. So please take it away.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I'll share my screen in a minute. But yeah, you were talking about the Monarch Regional Advisory Committee. So that's pretty much a working group across Santa Barbara, Ventura County, and San Luis Obispo County, led by the RCD, myself, and it's made of different land managers and cities, municipalities, a variety of partners that kind of focus on resource issues relating to monarchs and pollinators. So I'm happy that you got some benefit from that, and that thing continues quarterly. So anyone who's a land manager and interested in one of these areas, please email me. I'll put my contact at the end of my presentation here. So let me get into it. I'm going to share my screen here. So give me just a minute, everyone. Let me make sure. All righty. Hopefully you guys can see my screen now. Hopefully I get a yes from Antonio or someone.
That looks good.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, everyone. Oh, sorry. Let me get this Zoom out of the way. It always goes in the wrong way. So as Antonio said, my name is Andy Spyrka. I'm the Resource Conservation Specialist here at the Ventura County Resource Conservation District. This is our community garden we have. It's a firescape garden you're seeing in the background. But we're located out in the city of Somis. So we're a special district of the state of California. My role here at the district, as Antonio hinted at, is to manage projects concerning the natural resources of Ventura County and seek out grants to fund those projects and partners to work with to implement the projects on the ground. So before I start, I want to first say thank you to everyone for being in attendance today. It's a great attendance. I'm really excited to see that. It's great to see the excitement and willingness just for people to get involved and make a change when they need to. You know, I often say in plenty of my presentations that it will take a city to save the monarchs and pollinators. So, you know, let's work together and let's get it done. The front yards, backyards, you know, those gas stations Antonio was hitting at, that's important habitat between these larger restorations that I'm going to talk about. So we can't do it on our own. So let's work together. So I know I don't have too much time here. Start my little clock so I don't go over. So that being said, today I'll be talking very briefly about the local monarch-centric restorations that are going on in Ventura County, at least that are led by the Ventura County RCD. I'll be talking about the future goals we have in mind, and I'll be talking about, in general, about two different habitat types. We're restoring the breeding and migratory habitat, which typically has the milkweed on site where monarchs mate and forage. And then I'll be talking about overwintering habitat restorations, which is typically, these sites are located kind of in the coastal zone. They don't have milkweed on site. It's overwintering sites are areas of shelters for monarchs in the winter periods when they aren't mating and instead, you know, drinking nectar, clustering together to brave the winter colds. So that's kind of it's the frame of what I'll be talking about today. We'll get right into it. So I want to start by talking about the future plans we have with respect to the monarch and pollinator restorations throughout Ventura County. And then I'll discuss our current restorations on the ground. So you're kind of looking at our future expansion, and I'll get into that now. So on the map, you'll see that we called out a few different locations for what I'm calling our phase 2 expansion. Phase 1 is our current restorations, which I'll discuss shortly after this slide. The locations you see on this map, they display a diverse group of partners, if you can read those titles. They range from privately owned land to land trusts to publicly owned lands. So I'd like to briefly note that, you know, this sort of partnership was intentional. It's important that we work together across jurisdictions to solve our most pressing environmental and resource issues. And the RCD hopes to portray that mentality through this project and through the diverse partnership. So in general, this map is displaying the larger goal of our efforts, like I said, phase 2 here. And we hope to achieve these restorations in the next 5 to 10 years, which is essentially creating a monarch and flyway network throughout the West County of Ventura expanding shortly thereafter into the middle, and then the eastern portion of the county, which will be phase 3 of our restorations. And then hopefully moving into phase 4 ultimately, which is regional coordination with surrounding county restorations, which I kind of hinted at the beginning with Antonio here. So you note that some of the sites are surrounded by open space, an attempt to link with wildlife corridors. Again, intentionally chosen. This is our phase 2, right? So the wildlife corridors are the green area. So don't mind the light blue color. This map was actually created for a grant. And that's basically the jurisdictional boundary of the agency we requested funding from an additional restoration in the East County at a school district, which, by the way, is a great place to be restoring habitat because they got a lot of land at schools and they can do broad landowner agreements to make a lot of restoration on the ground happen. Anyways, so yeah, again, pay attention to the green and yellow areas. Those are the wildlife corridors and wildlife passages that we're trying to link up with. So our restoration program, as you can see, stems from and follows Xerces' 5 steps to recovering the Western monarch population. And I'm going to cycle through these steps shortly. They're going to seem pretty simple, but as you probably know, it's far from it. But it does provide a great guide and narrative when we seek funding for such efforts through grant offerings and donations by following these 5 steps. Because keep in mind, like many restorations, we don't receive a stable source of funding for our efforts. So we rely heavily either on grants, which I write myself or others, or on donations to actually fund these restorations. So you'll note the first topic on the list here is protecting and managing California overwintering sites properly. Although no milkweed's present, I know this is a milkweed conference, at these locations, it's important that we note that overwintering sites, if haven't already been discussed, are critical habitat for monarchs, right? It should be good to hear that we are accomplishing this first step and expect to expand into Camino Real and Harbor Boulevard overwintering sites in the city of Ventura shortly. But part of this first step, other than restoration, is protection, which is substantially lacking for monarchs and pollinators. Luckily, overwintering sites are within the coastal zone, so many of you may know that they do have a level of soft protection under the Environmentally Sensitive Habitat Area designation from the California Coastal Act. So welcome protection, of course, but it is a very rarely, well, it's getting less rarely, but very rarely ever enforced, such as one of the restorations I have in Oxnard, where it got overlooked and actually about half of the habitat got taken away, unfortunately. So our next step we follow, we're slowly evolving, as you can see on the map here, into breeding and migratory habitat sites, which is the majority of our phase 2 expansion. Again, I'll talk about phase 1 right after this slide. So we're currently in talks right now with the state and the federal government to secure additional funding to restore about 8 of our breeding and migratory habitat sites. We should know about this funding by the end of this year, and if awarded, the funding would also pay for extensive community outreach campaign, a local nursery and coordination to sell important monarch and pollinator plants to the public, and a unique monarch alert system, which I'll talk about in a minute, and leads kind of into the next step of Xerces' key steps to restoring monarch habitat. So to accomplish protecting monarch and their habitat from pesticides, we're trying to create, if funded, a unique and regional tri-county monarch alert system, which would track migrations and notify landowners, residents, farmers, land managers, residential cities of impeding migrations for monarchs, basically. We would provide tips and actions to take in preparation for the migration as they're coming through our area, such as reducing chemical use, cutting back milkweed that hasn't died back or isn't native, planting nectar and pollinator resources at the correct times of the year for bloom periods, as Antonio was talking about, and the such. It's kind of all would be wrapped up in this alert system. So it'd be, at first, we'd create the system through email notifications with the future hopes of building an application that would be free to download to the public, just as like Monarch Mapper, Milkweed Mapper, or those other applications. So I believe that could provide, if we do get it funded and we do this monarch alert system, it could provide some widespread soft protection for the populations as they move through our area. And keep in mind, I'm saying monarchs, but I'm also referencing all pollinators in this. So we'd be talking about other important aspects in that alert system. So the next step, of course, we got is answering key research questions and restoration of monarch habitat outside of California. So of course, as we restore sites, we will start to conduct research presented at regional meetings throughout the West and at local groups or opportunities such as this to outreach our projects. Additionally, we're pretty inclusive with what we do at the RCD. So everything we develop, from restoration plans to site informational plaques, even like one of these plaques that we put up at all of our restorations for information, we will only share that with any interested groups doing restoration, again, in hopes of encouraging widespread regional coordination, which I've been saying is it's going to take a city to save the monarchs and pollinators. So, that's what we're trying to do. Let's work together. Let's get out of our silos and let's make a difference together. So if we do get this expansion funding that I'm talking about for this phase 2, we'll be having plenty of volunteer opportunities. So I'm just going to give a quick plug. We have plenty of volunteer opportunities for the next 4 years at our sites, starting in 2022, at most of the sites you see on the screen right now. So, of course, we're always looking for people to join our volunteer force. We have a pretty good one. It's pretty active. So if you got some free time and some free hands, I encourage you to contact me and we can add you on. So shoot me an email if you're interested. Like I said, plenty of planting days are going to be coming, and it will take a city. So we really, really need everyone on deck here to help us. So you kind of got our broad stroke, what we're trying to do in the next 10 years or whatever for restoration. So now I just want to real briefly talk about our current restorations that are going on the ground. And again, I'm summarizing this stuff real quick. There's much more detail I could go into, but that's for another time. So you'll see here, we have our 3 current overwintering restorations happening right now. As I've said, these sites don't have milkweed. They're just overwintering, so they're within the coastal zone. But they do allow for monarchs to shelter and cluster during winter time, right, when they're migrating down here. So it's very important we maintain these sites. These are sites that we need help with from volunteers, and the ones that we'll be hosting upcoming volunteer planting days at. So the sites span from Santa Barbara County down to Ventura right now. So you got the Douglas Family Preserve, you got Carpenter Creek, and then you got the Winnemem Masonic Cemetery. And of course, my jurisdictional boundary as an RCD is Ventura County, but I am working with the RCD, Kachuma RCD in Santa Barbara County with the 2 Santa Barbara sites. So further encouraging that collaboration across jurisdictional boundaries. So as I've said, right now you're looking at phase 1 of our project. And as you know, phase 2 is hopefully going to be funded later this year by the state and result in the restoration of additional breeding and migratory habitat. So we'll talk real quick about what you're kind of seeing on the screen here. You're going to see the orange area. So if you haven't been able to tell already, that's the focus area of our restorations at all of these sites, primarily. The one on the far right, the Winnemem Masonic Cemetery, it's more of a U around the entire boundary, but nonetheless, those are our focus areas. That's where we do our detailed detailed habitat plans, which I'm going to talk about shortly. And that's just where we kind of start the restoration. And then, keep in mind, these restorations are long-term restorations. And I'll talk about that shortly after this too. But I do want to note, we do have goals that you'll see here for phase 1, but also I want to note the funders. It's really important. So this phase 1 is funded by the California Wildlife Conservation Board, a state agency, through a California RCD block grant. It's also funded by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Partners Program, which is an amazing program to work with, by the way. Anyways, I'm really wanting to highlight that diverse partnership that's needed. We're working with local, state, regional, and West Coast experts to get these restorations done. It's not just me. There's a whole team behind me. There's so many other experts who know plenty more than I do that are assisting us with these restorations. So here are just a few starts. Here are just a few shots of our current Oxnard restoration. This is near Oxnard College. For those of you who know the area, it's down the street. There's kind of a 7-Eleven, and then you'll see a cemetery, and it's a Japanese cemetery. It's on the other side off Edding Road. So we expect to, finish this restoration at least in the next few years, but we just planted one of our last plants on site here, and we're going to move on to our next restorations at Carpenter Creek and Douglas Family Preserve after summer of this year to make sure we plant before raining season for one of them, just as Antonio was hinting at earlier. Saves us watering and really just helps the plants out. So I'll talk about this site real briefly because that's what we're almost done implementing. So the Oxnard site started on the ground work in February of this year, And we just put down, like I said, about our 300th plant in the ground this past Tuesday, I want to say it was. The plant species, it's a wide range of plant species we're putting in there. Antonio, we got plenty of what he talked about. So we got Monterey cypress, we got some toyons there for windbreaks. We, of course, got ceanothus, different yarrows, and of course, we got the deerweed. We want to make sure we get those nectar and pollen resources and the bloom periods. So those are just some of the plants we use. It's not the entire plant palette, but it's exciting that this restoration is almost fully implemented. And of course, we now have the long road ahead of us for monitoring and maintenance, ensuring plant survivability and longevity of the site. And that's why I'm going to get into detail just after this slide, how we do that. But before we move on, one primary reason this restoration was implemented so quickly and efficiently was due to the community involvement. The location is a cemetery, as you can kind of see, but it's an outdoor green space. And it's hard to imagine that, but it really is an outdoor green space. It's almost like an outdoor gathering area for the local community. They actually hold a yearly Monarch Festival here on site for Ventura County. Let me know and feel free to reach out and I'll let you know those contact info. They're going to do one this year or next year. And actually this site's going to be featured on the Travel Channel pretty soon, ironically. So this site has some importance other than the cemetery and the restoration. The community is connected and it really shows. There's a community group that leads and helps me with all the restorations. They organize more volunteers. And I'm just trying to say that, we couldn't be doing this without everyone's help. I have a team that can go out and plant stuff, but on the left here, you'll see a photo, my left, of all of our volunteers. When we're out there, we're doing education with them. We're doing, handing out plants, handing out seed packets. It's a whole event other than just putting a plant in the ground. And we're really appreciative of the efforts. So now I'm at 14 minutes, but I'll be wrapping up here pretty soon. Now that you know about the restorations, I'd like to briefly talk about how we kind of holistically go about implementing these restorations because they're complicated. And like I said, it's not just me doing this. It's a whole team. I get the luxury of having my face painted on it, but I just want everyone to know that there's a lot of people working behind the scenes. So as I've said multiple times now in this short presentation, it takes a city to get these restorations done and for us to save the population. The RCD works with local, regional, and state expert consultants such as Althouse and Mead to develop our restoration plans. We sit on statewide and regional working groups such as the Monarch Regional Advisory Committee Working Group, another statewide group, and some West Coast groups to understand the best available scientific practices. And of course, we rely on volunteers such as yourself to get the boots on the ground work implemented. So the first step, to any restoration really, is to understand the site, right? And to understand the site, you create a management plan. So these plans, or habitat management plans, as I like to call them, these plans are long-term guiding documents that lead in the restoration of our sites. These habitat management plans will provide expert guidance that enhances the value of the site for overwintering monarchs, if we're talking about overwintering sites, and it will ensure that long-term plant survivability. We typically try to fund the entire management plan, but most of the time, or a lot of the time, these management plans are so detailed that they actually, and they're expected to do this, they require more funding than is present. And the reason for that is so we can, one, we're detailed. We want everything done in that plan, or everything that needs to be done, we want in that plan. But now we can use this plan to go to other funders and request more money and say, hey, we got a plan. We've already got funding from this partner, and this partner. We need funding from you to finish it. So it's a great, like I said, it creates a great argument and a great narrative for future funding. So what do these plans look like? Well, like I said, they include long-term monitoring. They include long-term maintenance protocols, guidance for planting palette and locations. They look at the light analysis through the plant canopies using fisheye lens. It's really interesting science with that. They also sometimes use LiDAR and understand how sun's entering the canopy and where the gaps are coming from above. So we can understand what plants need to come in to provide better protection and habitat. They also discuss site constraints on resources such as soil type, right? Hydrology too, that's all important, especially when we're talking about large scale restorations. And of course, they have best management practices that enhance plant survivability, prevent pesticide drift, increase access to nectar resources, and all that good stuff. So again, these plans provide a great argument for funding. And it's also a great thing to share with people if they just want to know how restorations are going about. So the next step when we do our restorations, is, like I said, restoration and monitoring. So the RCD, the Resource Conservation District, will implement the management plans throughout the next 5 to 10 years, like I said, at each site, at least. But we expect to engage with the community and have planting days, and these days, like I said, will double as educational outreach. So what I'm getting at is whenever we do a restoration, we're connected there long term, and we're connected with the community long term. So we expect to be there for a while, and we expect to bring more and more funding in because we want to see a success just as much as anyone else. We don't own land. We go and we restore other people's lands, and we respect that partnership. We understand it. So other than just restoring an area, we also want to understand how plants are being utilized, if they are being utilized, and if we are attracting monarchs and pollinators like we hope to be. So to accomplish this, we do conduct biannual detailed habitat surveys. We just did one last Friday at our restoration sites where we catalog site success and also conduct yearly overwintering surveys at our overwintering sites because they're so critical. And that's actually with the help of our volunteer force. So we train volunteers to go out and count monarchs as they're roosting and clustering. It's a really interesting thing, and we're happy to train you. You don't need any experience, and it's a great thing to do on a Saturday during the overwintering period, which is, give or take around from November to February or March, give or take a month, depending on the climate. So we will send those notifications out in the coming months to start training and moving forward with that. So again, please reach out to me and let me know if you're interested. So now the final component of all of our restorations, of all of our activities that we do at the district, really, is education. The RCD, and like many other RCDs throughout the state, there's about 99 of us, believe that part of the solution to a changing climate is education, engaging with the next generation to take over, and ensuring we take time to educate those who are set in their ways. So to be blunt, we can't just expect change to happen. We need to introduce the issue to the next generation while also understanding that the current generation, some stuff happened that probably shouldn't have. So during each planting day, we talk for about 30 to 45 minutes for an educational talk. We do Q&A sessions with volunteers. People ask us about plant choice, on how to take care of plants, similar to the questions that were coming up from Antonio. We talk about the decline of the monarchs. We talk about the decline of the West Coast population of the monarchs. And we answer some other questions that people want to have. And like I said, hand out seed packets and all of that. My point being here is that we're very holistic when we do everything. We want to get out of our silo and get the community involved, because we can have these large scale restorations that occur throughout the whole county, throughout the whole California. And it's great and it's really important, but we need these gas stations, these way stations in your front yard, your backyard, your side yards. So as monarchs and pollinators are flying in urban and built environments, they can stop, they can rest, they can refuel as they go from large restoration to large restoration. So it's important we educate people on that. So before we finally conclude here, I want to let you know what you can kind of do to make a difference if you haven't already been told today enough. But what you do on the local level, if I haven't said it, it really truly does matter. We will never have enough funding to mitigate all of our environmental needs. But with the help of volunteers and dedicated community members, we can accomplish our goals. It's not just free labor, it's really essential. Putting natives in your yard creates essential habitat for pollinators as they move through our urban environment, like I was just explaining. And being able to time those blooming periods, that's icing on the cake there, as Antonio was saying. We need to get used to native plantings browning. It's a natural occurrence. So the solution I'd like to recommend is to intermix blooming periods, if you haven't already been told that, into your garden. So as one native goes dormant, you got another native or a few other natives popping up at the right time. And then lastly, stand up, make your voice heard. Attend community scoping meetings and planning meetings. The government really does listen to you when you have enough people stand behind you. And I didn't go into detail about what happened at my Oxnard site, but there was an oversight in the approval when the planning committee approved a low-income, high-density housing, very important housing development. But there was an oversight, and the community did not realize, they did not show up at the scoping meeting, and it's been moved forward. Show up, make your voice heard, and set your feet in the ground and root in the ground. You can really make a difference. So anyways, with that, I know I was really briefly going through everything, but I really appreciate the time. I appreciate you guys inviting me here and all of you taking the time to listen and show your dedication. So I'll kind of end it on that. And that's kind of my presentation there. If you had any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Let me try to stop sharing my screen.
Thank you very much, Andy. So we do have, I'll let Izzy come after this question, but there's a lot of folks asking about Santa Barbara, Simi Valley, LA, Orange County. I know Richard, who's going to talk right after you, and I talked to Richard right now. He's cool with us spending a little bit more time, if you're cool, Andy, going over our time frame. But Richard said he's about to talk about the San Fernando Valley, I believe,
Okay.
and how folk can help in the LA area. And then we have another gentleman speaking about that. So what about like Ventura County, Santa Barbara? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a really good question. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of, if you haven't already been or haven't already noticed, been told, there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff going on right now in the legislature. There's a lot of push going on trying to either review the status of the Monarch, but on the even getting, even on the smaller level, our county supervisors, County of Ventura, just I don't know, Antonio or whoever, correct me. I want to say it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, just released a new order to county-owned land. And now on county-owned land, they need to not only protect monarch habitat, but they need to start encouraging monarch habitat by planting more milkweed. So that's one action that's happening. And I'll tell you, I just had a conversation last week with a kind of a lobbyist group up in Santa Barbara County, and they were asking me about, how can we get your efforts up here? How can we do more stuff up here? And that's what I'm doing with the Kachuma RCD up to my north. We're working together to do that and get that done. But I said, hey, first step, get your board of supervisors, the county supervisors, get them on board. Get them to start giving some protection needs. Get them, so I forwarded the protection that our county just actually awarded monarchs. It doesn't have much teeth to it, but it's a great, great starting point. So there's stuff going on slowly but surely. My Monarch Regional Advisory Committee does have land managers from like San Luis Obispo even, and they're doing restorations. I think right now you don't see a lot of on the ground opportunities to volunteer or just to know about, is because a lot of people are developing their plans, but I do think in the next few years, you're going to start seeing the rollout of a lot more restorations. Yeah, it's not happening tomorrow like we would love it to, but it is in the pipeline. This stuff takes time. I mean, my Oxnard restoration was a year in planning before I even got on the ground earth-breaking one. So there's stuff going on. Santa Barbara, I think I might be the only one doing restoration up there for at least this wide scale for monarchs, but I'm not too sure, so I don't want to misquote that. Hopefully that answered your question. Didn't go on a tangent there.
Easy.
Yeah, so I see one question in the chat. Let's try to find it. Loretta is asking, can we read any type of management plan? Is that the same as a feasibility plan?
Yeah, you can. And I always say, and I got it, if I'm preaching it, I'm going to do it. So if you want to read a management plan, you want to understand what it's like, feel free. I'm going to throw my contact info into the chat here. I'm always open for any questions. Shoot me a question. And 1 second, let me type this in before I give you someone else's wrong email and they're getting a bunch of butterfly emails. So there's my contact in there. Feel free to reach out. I'm happy to share the restoration plan. I always think it's important for community members who are involved in this type of work to understand what's going on. Because when I was on the outside, I was always going, well, what's happening? How are they doing it? Not that I want to say they're doing it wrong, but I just want to understand. So I'm happy to share it. Please reach out. It is similar to a feasibility plan. It's very detailed. So yeah, the only way is just to read it. They're usually about 60 to 80 or 90 pages long, give or take on the site, how big the restoration is and all that stuff. But yeah, feel free to reach out. I did see another question here I don't mean to answer in case someone else was asking. Is the Ventura City coming on board with restorations? They are. So I just had a large meeting last week with my phase 2 partners. So that's about 10 partners. And, sorry if my internet's cutting out. But the city of Ventura is coming online. What we're going to try to do, if we do get our funding awarded from the state agency at the end of this next quarter, we will be working at Camino Real Park and the Olivia's Golf Course to do a breeding migratory habitat at Olivia's Golf Course, but then at Camino Real and to do actually a new management plan. We won't be doing on the ground restoration unless I secure additional funding. But yeah, City of Ventura is coming online. They got a lot of critical and really good habitat too. And they're really excited about this and they want to do all they can. So it's just a matter of me typing fast enough to get the grants in and to get the funding. Hope that answered your question.
I love Camino Real Park. It's such a cool park. That'd be cool to see work. It's so easy to get to for a lot of folks in Ventura and Oxnard too. So
yeah, it is. And, you know, I'm sorry to cut you off, but before I forget, you know, the Oxnard Restoration, you know, I'm happy to do a tour if people want to get out there and see what's happening on the ground. That's an open site. You can go walk around yourself. I can give you the address. Camino Real, it's an extremely involved community location. And I'm looking forward to engaging with the community on that one. You know, like I said, when we come and we do a restoration, I don't like coming anywhere saying I know best and you don't. The landowner owns the land. They most of the time understand the land. So I come to enhance their understanding and do it the correct way and work with them. So when we go to public lands, we have that same mentality. We're going to work with the city, but we're going to have scoping sessions with the public. As we're creating these management plans, we're going to ask them, what do you want to see in it? What do you want to see in your backyard, essentially, right? Because Camino Real, there's homes that directly abate that. And they're really connected to it. And I think they should be a part of the solution as we're trying to solve our resource issues. So community involvement, it's always top of my priority at the end of the day.
Andy, I'm looking forward to the next meeting.
Thank you so much.
Is the general public invited to hang out at these meetings? It's every quarter, right? Every 3 months?
It is every quarter. They're not yet invited, but, you know, I wouldn't be against it. So maybe I'll talk with you offline on that one, Dan, because the group just started this year. So we're just trying to get some footing. But again, you know, if I'm preaching it, man, I need to be dishing it. So, you know, it would be a great way to people just to get involved and understand, because I think there's so much going on. And sorry, I don't mean to take up my time, Richard, but there's so much going on the ground level here that the community, I think, can get overwhelmed. So if we can give them an opportunity to understand and get involved, I think that's important. So maybe I will open it up sometime next year to the public, maybe like 1 or 2 sessions a year.
And we might not even have to open those sessions, Andy. We might just, I think the reporting to the public and like letting them know like that people are doing stuff, like Richard is doing stuff, Bob Allen is doing stuff. CMPS Santa Monica is doing stuff to let people know, because I think people are freaked out, right? And so we want to keep them in their mind. These are the 5 things to do: cut back your tropical milkweed, grow this in the March, and then look at what, and it's almost like a website or something for Southern California milkweed, right? Just an update, like an Instagram or something.
We need to have something that has that collective knowledge.
To let people know, like,
accessible.
When I freak out, I reach in it's probably not good for me to say this, to admit this, but when I freak out, I open the fridge and have a beer. So when people freak out about monarchs, maybe they can go to Southern California milkweed.org and see the restoration sites coming up, the meetings that are happening, right? That would be ideal for maybe something. I love that
idea. That's a really good idea, is if we can centralize this info. And then that goes for plant lists, because I'm sure all of us get the same questions. What plants? It's a great question. Yeah. So let's start creating a centralized spot to download that. I love that.
I thought you were going to say the great idea was the beer in the fridge. Andy.
Oh, that's always a good idea. I'll never say no to that. Just don't give up. Just make it an inspiring moment, right?
We're doing LA at this very moment. Andy, thank you so much. I'll see you very soon. We haven't had enough chance, I don't think, to even just promote ourselves. We've been doing a very bad job. And so who is putting this conference on is Samo Fund. We work directly with the National Park Service here in the Santa Monica Mountains. We get to run the nursery here on their property. We do a lot of things apart from plants. But I'll encourage you guys, if you're interested in supporting this work, which is completely free today, to go to samofund.org. We'll put the slide up after this last speaker, and support our work. We're trying to hire 3 part-time youth this summer. We're calling it Mission Milkweed. And we're trying to get over 2 million milkweed seed collected, which sounds like a lot, but it's actually a very small amount of pods. If each pod has about 100 to 200 seed in it, it's actually not too much seed. And our goal is to start bulking it here at the nursery so we can give seed away, so that we can grow plants and give plants away to community gardens, to restoration sites, to homeowners, etc. So there's the link in the chat right there.